Minato's parentage is one of the most interesting mysteries in the history of Naruto. As far as we know, Minato's lineage was never one of high priority or value, considering the Namikaze last name is only mentioned when referring to him and his accomplishments. We don't even know if this was a clan of people similar to Uchiha or Hyuga, or if Minato got his name aside from parentage on some Han Solo type beat. This trend doesn't begin or end with Minato either. Exceptional shinobi seem to spawn from unknown or unexceptional parents, like Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Sakura. All are examples of this. Sakura's parents aren't even shinobi, yet Sakura is stated to be born blessed with extremely good chakra control and is very book smart, with her picking up on and mastering medical ninjutsu within the span of 3 years, and the databook saying she truly earned her nickname of Tsunade Jr. Jiraiya and Orochimaru don't even have known last names, yet they became two of the three great shinobi sometime during their early 20s, matching someone like Tsunade, who is both Senju and Uzumaki blood, if her grandmother is Mito Uzumaki, which is never confirmed, but you can make the assumption that she is, given that we don't see Hashirama take on any other partner unless you think Hashirama was just like that or something. This would imply Tsunade is his granddaughter from a bastard child, but like I said, that's not really supported. There are other theories on Minato's parentage. Some people think he's Tsunade's son, other people think he's Jiraiya's son. I'll touch on these a bit into the video, but there are a few things to note about Minato that I think need to be pointed out. Number one, his homeland is the Land of Fire, or Konoha. We know this because when he's speaking to Kushina about not letting the leaf be destroyed, he tries to get her to empathize with him, not sacrificing Konoha, but getting her to remember she had once lost her homeland as well, so she should know how that feels. 2. Minato is never depicted with any father or mother type figure as a kid. Granted, we do only see Minato for a short time as a kid, when he initially spots Kushina, and then later again when he saves her from 2 shinobi who tried to kidnap her, which leads me into number 3. Minato has always been an exceptional shinobi since he was born. He murked these people who kidnapped Kushina when he was just a kid and they were 2 fully grown adults. He also had the highest recorded score on the written part of the Chunin exams, with it only being seconded by Itachi. 4. If Minato's parents were ever shinobi, they either never fought alongside him, or it wasn't particularly memorable when they did fight alongside him, considering the only times he feels anything special when fighting along someone, as noted by himself, is with KCM2 Naruto and Kushina. I'm actually going to go with the former here and say that Minato's parents, shinobi or not, did not fight alongside him, considering his deep sadness over leaving Naruto without any parents to grow up with. I know just because he felt sad about leaving his son doesn't mean he was without parents growing up. Speaking from personal experience, growing up with parents, I would hate to leave my son without parents growing up. But Minato does mention some things that could indicate he had parents for maybe a short while. He mentions that there are certain things only Kushina can tell Naruto, being that she is his mother, and that since he is his father, it's his duty to die for him. These things could very well be self-taught or just an opinion, but at least on the mother part, that seems to be spoken from experience. 5. The final thing I want to mention about Minato is that he is extremely powerful. Almost abnormally powerful, in fact. I'm going to get right into the video now, but before I do, I'd appreciate if you left a like on it and subscribe as well. This video took a lot of work and research considering how little information there is on the topic, but let's get started. The first thing I'd like to touch on is Minato's exceptional capability as a shinobi, despite seemingly having no special lineage. For one, we do know, as stated by Hagoromo and demonstrated by Naruto, just because your parents are exceptional does not mean you will be exceptional as well. Naruto had none of the prowess Minato did as a child, and he accepts this is true when Hagoromo tells him. However, we do know the opposite can also be true, where children can completely eclipse their parents on their own power alone, as demonstrated by Itachi, who long surpassed his father Fugaku and was the strongest Uchiha excluding Obito at just the age of 12 or 13 as stated in the data books. It is important I mention that in the anime, it has been made to seem like Fugaku and Itachi are more like equals rather than Itachi being the clear superior, with the anime giving Fugaku the Mangekyo Sharingan and letting him use it to make Itachi fall to his knees from a genjutsu, or Itachi saying his dad is the worst possible opponent for him. Fugaku in the novel that this arc is adapting, or the manga, does not possess the Mangekyo Sharingan, and time again it is stated Itachi is superior to him, Like when Fugaku thinks Itachi alone would be the deciding factor in the winner of the war between the Uchiha clan and the Leaf. In the novel and the data book made to supplement the manga, like I mentioned earlier, calling him the strongest Uchiha. I bring up Itachi as an example because him and Minato are both examples of this and are kind of compared narratively in a way that they are both geniuses above the Sannin level. Young, powerful shinobi, with Itachi getting the second highest written Chunin exam score next to Minato, at least in his novel. Now, where they begin to differ is bloodline, but that leads into my next point, which is that every great bloodline has to start from somewhere. We know the Uchiha and Senju are direct descendants from Hagoromo, Hyuga from Hamura, then Uzumaki broke off from a branch of the Senju, so on and so forth. This is even true in other series like Game of Thrones, the Starks, Targaryens, Baratheons, Tullys, Valerians, Lannisters. You get the point. I'm basically getting at the idea that Minato would be the start of a great bloodline or clan. Unfortunately, no one got to carry on the name Namikaze, but we do know his bloodline is exceptional. Even Boruto now is an extremely capable shinobi who could do things Minato couldn't do in his lifetime passively, like imbuing a chakra nature into a Rasengan. I said I would touch on both theories regarding Jiraiya being Minato's father, as well as the alternate theory that Tsunade is his mother and Dankato is his father. We can at least come to the conclusion that these two theories are mutually exclusive, meaning that if Tsunade is Minato's mother, then Jiraiya cannot be his father, and vice versa. Considering Tsunade was finally planning to sleep with Jiraiya following his success of the infiltration on the Rain Village, where he sadly was unalived by one of his former students, Nagato. There are other hints of things like this, like Tsunade catching Jiraiya spying on her at a spring and putting him in a near-death state by beating him up. That's not typically something you would do to your significant other or boyfriend. I do recognize that there are alternate interpretations of this. If you read the Viz translation, it can kind of make it seem like Tsunade was jealous of Jiraiya looking at other women, since Jiraiya says he tried to do research at the women's bath and was then clobbered by Tsunade. This interpretation is faulty though, considering Tsunade has never been one to respond well to Jiraiya's more perverted advances, or anyone else's for that matter. And the anime also directly states that he was peeping on Tsunade. Tsunade also does say that she knows Jiraiya's been interested in her and she's still just not interested in him. That is directly before he goes away to the Rain Village. Anyway, I probably spent too long on that, but yeah, Minato's parents are either one or the other. Tsunade and Jiraiya did not have a child together, blah blah blah. I think the theory that Jiraiya is Minato's dad is a lot easier to go over, so we'll start with him. So is Jiraiya Minato's father? The answer, probably not. I know this is rather anticlimactic, but between the two theories, this is without a doubt the worst one. Jiraiya and Minato seem far more likely to have a student-teacher type of relationship, much more than a father-son type of relationship, especially when you consider how Minato refers to Jiraiya as Master Jiraiya whenever speaking of him. This isn't an outright debunk to the claim that Jiraiya is Minato's dad, but there is another that I want to touch on, but we'll wait till the end of the Tsunade section to go over that one, since it sort of covers both theories. But yeah, let's get into the Tsunade theory. There's a lot more to cover there. This theory does have some dumb points to it. Like, I saw one thread of a guy mentioning the fact that this theory had to be true because Naruto calls Tsunade Granny Tsunade, meaning she is indeed his grandmother. But this doesn't make sense for obvious reasons, like the fact that Naruto was calling her this in part 1 when he had no idea Minato was his dad. After all, he did find that out in the middle of the fight with Pain, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe Naruto was playing dumb in front of Minato and he knew the whole time. Hooray, theory confirmed. Anyway, one of the bigger points about this that I do give more credence to the Tsunade theory than the Jiraiya theory is that Tsunade has a known partner in Dankato. There is a number of other things that I want to mention though, that's just a beginner. So let's get started with them. Now, for starters, Minato and Tsunade have both the same hair color and the same blood type. This is important because Naruto and Minato also share these specific traits, and your blood type in Naruto is linked to your personality. The databook says that people with type B, like Naruto, Minato, and Tsunade, are uninhibited and hate to lose. They're cheerful, but their impulsiveness gets them into trouble at times, Hating to lose is extremely consistent throughout the people mentioned here. Tsunade went hard trying to defeat Kid Naruto while she was drunk. Obviously, Kid Naruto hates to lose, that's like his whole personality. And though you could chalk this up to Minato doing his duty as a shinobi and Hokage, he won the third war basically on his own and literally sacrificed his family just so Naruto could beat Obito. Their impulsiveness getting them into trouble is also consistent, with Tsunade making an impulse decision to betray Orochimaru after drugging Jiraiya, almost getting her unalived by Kabuto. Naruto gets into trouble all the time because of his impulsiveness, like in his fights with Orochimaru, Kabuto, etc, etc. The list goes on. Naruto's always getting into trouble. Minato's impulsiveness to attack Obito got him into trouble and almost got sucked away into Kamui. I won't stop the conversation of Dan being Minato's father here though, since that creates a few problems in the timeline, so let's start with age. Jiraiya and Tsunade are both 54 at the time of the third data book, which covers up to Jiraiya's death and takes place after part 1 is over and part 2 begins. So subtract 2 to 3 years because Jiraiya and Naruto say they've been gone 2 to 3 years depending on translations, and you get that Tsunade was 51 in part 1. Subtract 13 years from that, which was Naruto's age at the end of part 1, and you get Tsunade was 38 at the time of Minato's death and Naruto's birth. Subtract 24 years from that, since we know that's how old Minato was whenever he died, and you get that Tsunade was 14 at Minato's birth. Now, it's not impossible to have a kid at 14, but that's not the point of this argument. The point is, Tsunade didn't meet Dan until after she was 14. How do we know this? A few things we know are that Dan died after Tsunade was named one of the Sannin, considering the fact that Kunogi Mukome calls her one of the Prodigal Three while she is literally trying to heal Dan, and that Tsunade stopped fighting after she gained her fear of blood, or at least 2 years afterwards, which she got right after Dan died, from looking at the blood on her hands. Databook 4 tells us that Dan died 31 years ago, and also tells us that Tsunade is 55, meaning Tsunade was 24 when Dan had passed away, and Dan was 27. So following this line of logic, they'd have to have been together at least 10 to 11 years in order to be both Minato's parents, meaning they had met when Tsunade was 13 to 14 and Dan was 16 to 17, which is completely wrong. We know Tsunade and Dan met in the middle of the Second Shinobi World War, as it's stated there in the middle of war numerous times, and that the Second Shinobi World War started around 20 years after the First World War, which is when Tsunade was born, since she was born early enough to see Hashirama, who was killed during the First World War, making Tsunade around 24 when the Second War started, meaning she lost Nawaki, Dan, and became a Sannin all within the same year. Okay, sorry for the signing history lesson. I know this is a video about Minato's parentage, but that stuff is extremely important since we can now rule out Dan as being Minato's father, which drops the probability of Tsunade being Minato's mother fairly significantly, since now we can't point to one direct partner for her at the time of Minato's birth. Those things I found during my own research. The rest of the things I'm about to mention I gathered from various threads I found on the internet. As I'm sure everyone already knows, I am not the creator of this theory, and it's been around for years. There was talk about Minato and Dan not only graduating the academy at the same time, but also the fact that they were around the same height and weight, but considering the timeline work I did earlier, we can conclude that these are just mere coincidences and not any evidence that Dan is Minato's father. There is, however, the fact that both Naruto and Nawaki look alike, which is noted by both Jiraiya and Tsunade, which this thread points out to say that there could be some sort of family resemblance, since outside of if Minato is Tsunade's son and him being Naruto's dad, the only family Tsunade and Naruto share is the fact that Uzumaki is a branch family of the Senju clan. Another argument suggests that Madara/Obito, saying that after the Uchiha clan ignored Madara's wish for an Uchiha Hokage and his subsequent death, that the village leadership stayed in Senju hands, and when he says this it focuses on the Hokage monument showing all 4 Hokage, suggesting that the Senju bloodline stayed in that seat of power and that the Uchiha were nothing but their lackeys. I'd like to offer an alternate interpretation of this, since it does show Hiruzen, who is not of Senju descent but a Sarutobi. I think what Obito means is that Hiruzen was a student of both Hashirama and Tobirama, and that Minato was a student of Hiruzen's students, so it stayed in the Senju hands that way. The Hokage monument also doesn't show Tsunade, so you can't make any argument for that part of it. Tsunade passing down her necklace to Naruto also isn't a good argument, considering she also passed it to Dan, who was just her boyfriend, not even her husband or anything. Although I'm sure Tsunade planned to eventually marry Dan, they hadn't yet, and she had given him the necklace. Another of the relatively strong pieces of evidence is that Naruto canonically looks similar to Hashirama, as Obito/Madara says whenever literally looking at him. I personally think Obito is just like tweaking out here because these two do not look alike in any way. And I asked numerous other people for their opinion as well, and no one seems to agree with Obito here. However, let's say Obito is correct and they do look alike. This could simply just be a trait brought about by Naruto being a descendant of Asura, who Hashirama was also a descendant of. For this last piece of evidence, I'm going to have to read a part of Jiraiya and Tsunade's conversation from chapter 367, and I'm going to read it in two different ways. The first way will be with me accepting that Minato is Tsunade's son and using that to contextualize the statements, and the second way will be me reading it as a skeptic and trying to contextualize the statements another way. Jiraiya says there's no better Hokage in Konoha than Tsunade right now. Her response is there's Kakashi and eventually Naruto. Jiraiya says Kakashi still has a ways to go, and despite the fact that you saw it fit to give him your necklace, Naruto is even further. Tsunade says you're one to talk, putting so much of your energy into training him, even teaching him the Rasengan. Yeah, well, it brought back memories of the time I taught Minato. That's what Jiraiya says. And then she says, with a changed look on her face, Minato no Mikaze, huh? They really are pretty similar. And then Jiraiya goes on to talk about how Minato was a genius. And then he says that he's never been a parent himself, so he may be completely off base, but if he was his own kid, he'd be super proud of him. These first two little mentions here, when Tsunade has the sadder look on her face, the people who think that Minato is her son would say that this is because Jiraiya brought up her dead son. That's why she has the sad look on her face. The way I look at it would just be because Minato died early, she knew him and clearly liked him a lot, and that's why she has the sad look on her face. And then when Jiraiya says that he was never a parent himself, so he might be off base, but if he was his own kid, he'd be super proud of him. The people who think that Minato is Tsunade's son think that Jiraiya is saying that, well, you should be super proud of Minato considering he's your own kid. I read this statement just as he's saying that he would be proud of Minato if he was his own kid, just like he's proud of him now. I don't think that points towards any direction of him being Tsunade's son or anything of the sort. The last bit of evidence was when Jiraiya says when he sees Naruto, he basically sees him as a grandchild, which I don't know why they would interpret that part as him being Tsunade's son. If anything, I would think that that was evidence to support that he's Jiraiya's son, but that's what the thread said, so I'm just saying that. But either way, I don't think that this is any evidence that he is Jiraiya's son or Tsunade's son. I think this is literally just Jiraiya saying that he thinks of Naruto as a grandchild because he raised Minato kind of like a son since he was his sensei. That's it. All in all, I think the second way to read this convo is a valid way to interpret it, and that this conversation would not prove that Minato is Tsunade's bastard child from a teenage pregnancy. All in all, I think through all the research I had to do on this topic, it has led me to believe that Minato's parents are completely unknown, and that any of the theories out there claiming that they prove Minato's parentage either way are false. And unless we get some additional information in a new flashback story of Boruto or something, we'll never actually find out. Sorry for the somewhat anticlimactic ending, but I think it's better if I just tell you the truth after giving you all the information than lie and try to make it so Tsunade is Minato's mom. But I did have to do extensive research on this video. The video was quite mentally tiring to make, having to figure out all the timeline issues and whatnot. So I'd appreciate a like and subscribe if you haven't. I have tons of other Minato videos on my page, and I'll definitely be talking about him again in the future. But other than that, have a nice day.